Hello all and welcome to Chalk Talk, your source for Ohio State varsity athletics, news, updates, and analysis. I'm your host, Kaylee Rentz, coming to you from the Lantern TV studios in Columbus, Ohio. I'm joined by Senior Lantern reporter Andrew Todd Smith, and our Assistant Sports Director Aaron Yarian is a producer for the day, so he's in the back behind the scenes, but he is still joining us. And first, we did want to give our deepest condolences to the Kara-George family and friends and teammates of Costa Kara-George. He was an exceptional athlete participating in both wrestling and football here at Ohio State University, and he will truly be missed. Yeah, it's obviously, as you said, Kaylee, tragic. Our hearts go out to the families, as you so eloquently already said. Good to know, though, that the team will be showing support in memoriam of Costa by wearing a number 53 decal on the back of their helmets this coming Saturday. Yeah, so everyone here at Ohio State definitely affected, but you know, Costa's memory will be at least commiserated by Ohio State football players. But getting into Ohio State football, Ohio State squared off against their biggest rival, the Michigan Wolverines, beating them 42-28. But even with the win, the Buckeyes had to have some drama in there a little bit, and they lost quarterback JT Barrett, who sustained a serious right ankle injury that will keep him sidelined for the rest of the season. The Buckeyes will now be turning to redshirt sophomore Cardell Jones to help lead the Buckeyes to their victory, well, hopeful victory in the Big Ten championship. So, Andrew, how serious is this JT Barrett loss? I mean, obviously, we've seen Cardell come in a couple times this year, but how serious is it? Well, it's devastating. You know, this team is deep. They're talented. Urban Meyer has recruited the guys that he wants there, but there's no question. You know, the task that Cardell Jones is up against to replace a Heisman contender at quarterback in JT Barrett. You know, he's the school record holder in passing touchdowns and in offensive yards off the line of scrimmage. And of course, very fitting that JT Barrett would have received the Greasy Breeze Quarterback of the Year award from the Big Ten, because Drew Brees' record was the very man's who he broke this past weekend in terms of total touchdowns responsible for, with 45 in Big Ten history. So, obviously, it's brutal to see JT Barrett, such a talented athlete, go down like that. The air cast, you know, was dramatic, and obviously you had Devin Gardner come in, show class and sportsmanship. This team has no time to wait around. They're going to have to adjust, just as they did when Braxton Miller went down. So Cardell Jones is now the guy. But before we get into that, let's at least break down some of the players that earned some Big Ten awards in addition to Barrett's Greasy Breeze Award. He also was awarded the Thompson Randall L. Freshman of the Year. And Joey Bosa, his name keeps coming up. He won't go away. He was, along with JT Barrett, Duran Grant, and Pat Elflein, were named to the first team All Big Ten. And on the second team, tight end Jeff Hireman, as well as captain and defensive lineman Michael Bennett, Joshua Perry, and Taylor Decker. So some Buckeyes really getting recognized by the conference. But let's talk about Bosa, and specifically why his other award that he earned this week is relevant. Defensive Player of the Year for the Big Ten. Who's he facing against? Melvin Gordon III, the Offensive Player of the Year for the conference. So he's the Wisconsin Badgers' go-to guy, just as Tevin Coleman was for the Indiana Hoosiers. 13th ranked Wisconsin at Lucas Oil Stadium Saturday night, 8:17 exact kickoff. And we're going to have a heck of a matchup, Kaylee. 2260 is Melvin Gordon's yardage counter on the season. So this guy is their all-purpose threat. He has 3 receiving touchdowns on top of that, in addition to the 26 on the ground. So they're going to rely heavily on him. But they have guys that are no slouch at the quarterback position. Joel Stave came into here in Columbus last year and, you know, made the Buckeyes really need to earn their victory, torching the secondary with Jacob Aberderis. But Tanner McAvoy, don't sleep on him either. He's their other quarterback. He has 3 rushing touchdowns in the last 4 games, even though Stave is their primary dude under center. Third leading rusher on the team with 572 yards. And then you flip the script. Wisconsin's second ranked total defense in the country. So Ohio State being led by a third string quarterback, and you never want your guy to have to take his first collegiate start with the conference crown and the season and playoff hopes on the line. But we'll see if Jones responds to the pressure. But I think that JT Barrett, I think he made a good, kind of like a good comment kind of throughout these these little interviews he's had where he said that if it wasn't for him, Cardell would be the one that was kind of starting. Like they kind of had a toss-up between the two. So we'll have to see how. But so you talk about Melvin Gordon, you talk about Wisconsin is these guys that can push through, and Ohio State doesn't have the best run defense. So what does Ohio State have to do to kind of change that up?
Well, it's a great question because, as we mentioned, Tevin Coleman, David Cobb from Minnesota, they've had good games. Jeremy Langford, Michigan State, wasn't quite the presence that we expected him to be. But, yeah, this team absolutely has to step up their run defense. They have to pressure Stave. They have to make sure that they're bottling up the gaps. You know, Jeff Hireman, earlier in the week, had some comments on Wisconsin's talent in terms of crowding the gaps defensively, what he'll be facing, but Ohio State's going to need to do the same thing.
They're just really good at what they do. You know, they play just a few different types of defense, which, you know, is tough to figure out what they're playing, but, you know, they're gap sound, and, you know, they got a lot of good players on that team, you know, have a knack for the football. You know, they're not real big, heavy guys or anything, but, you know, they get to the football and make plays. So,
a couple years ago, Braxton, you know, was in a tough position, didn't have the athletes or people that had experience where he had to do a lot of it by himself. Whereas with myself and Cardell, we got people around us where we could hand the ball off, like I said, throw it around, so we don't have to win the game. So just go out there and just play his game. He does a lot of crazy things with his body. He could sling the ball this whole football field and, you know, throw it 100 miles an hour. But he doesn't have to go out there and feel like he has to win it by himself.
So what do you see happening with this Ohio State offense?
So, okay, that's a great question to ask because Cardale Jones is – JT Barrett is basically saying he's got a supporting cast. He has a much stronger O-line than the same one that gave up all those sacks to Virginia Tech when JT Barrett was facing his first 100,000-plus crowd against, you know, a very stout Hokies team that ended up being bowl eligible, by the way. So, but anyway, getting back on track, Cardale Jones, he's got all the tools on the offensive side of the ball. If the defense steps up like they did against Michigan when Barrett went down with that foot injury, yeah, a broken ankle did not break the Buckeyes season, and Cardale Jones is just going to have to continue to play turnover-free football and just manage the game and not put them in a position where Wisconsin is going to run all over them. But he's 11 of 19 in his career for 121 yards. So, I mean, the guy's thrown some passes, not as many as you would like to have your starting quarterback have in the Big Ten Championship, but he's had significant time in 5 games this year. The entire second half of the Illinois game, he can hurdle, he can run, he's a big guy. He has 2 passing touchdowns in that Illinois performance. So I don't see him having trouble, but Wisconsin's a physical team, so they're going to test him, and Cardale Jones is going to have to rely. That's kind of the point. He shouldn't have to take this game on his back and win it single-handedly. He should be able to rely on Curtis Samuel and Ezekiel Elliott, the 1,000-yard rusher, of course, Michael Thomas, Devin Smith, Evan Spencer. You know, there's tons of names, and Jalen Marshall. Don't be surprised if we see him come in a couple times to take some snaps at quarterback, just to throw Wisconsin off their game. So I think that's what we're looking at. Come 8 o'clock Saturday evening, it's only a 4.5 point spread according to Las Vegas. So Wisconsin is favored despite Ohio State having a slightly higher ranking, but we'll have to see what happens in Indianapolis.
So let's do the score predictions. I heard on your special with Hayden and Aaron, you're really close.
I was. Thank you for the shout out. I was 1 point off, 42-28. I guessed 41-28. So, but I didn't predict a Barrett injury, so you could criticize me for that.
Ohio State cannot, we can't go through a broadcast like without at least having one type of just dramatic event happen during the week. Unfortunately, we had one that just didn't need to happen. It's unfortunate for the guy. I feel bad.
Yep. But okay, so score prediction. This defense is no joke for Wisconsin. Melvin Gordon put up 406 yards, 408 yards against Nebraska. If he eclipses the 200-yard mark on the ground, Ohio State's in trouble. So if they're able to contain him to less than 200 and make Stave maybe throw an interception or two, they'll be okay. They'll be in contention. I'm going 37-33, Ohio State.
Oh, okay. So, okay. All right. That's a good one. Mine is going to be 27-24, Wisconsin.
Okay.
I'm going to give it to the Badgers. I do think that even though Ohio State has all the tools to win, Cardell's new. going to be put in there. I think that's a big game to play in Big Ten Championship. I'd be nervous. He's got to be. So I'm going to give it to the Badgers.
Yeah. I'm not one to argue with you. I like that we have a little disagreement, but Ohio State, if they're going to make my prediction come true, they're relying on a guy with not a ton of experience, but hopefully enough reps in practice to make up for that. And hopefully he's learned the playbook, so we'll see.
So another team here at Ohio State that's going to be starting their postseason is the Ohio State women's volleyball team. Now, the senior Taylor Sherwin picked up the final Big Ten Setter of the Week award as the women's volleyball team concluded their regular season with 2 wins over the Minnesota Golden Gophers, that was a 3-2 win, and the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, which was a 3-0 win. So Sherwin and sophomore middle blocker Taylor Sandbothy, they both earned a spot on the All Big Ten honorable mention list. So the Buckeyes, right now, they're ranked 18th in the country with a record of 21-11. They did earn an unseeded berth into the 2014 NCAA tournament, which fielded 64. So the women will be taking on Lipscomb University in Lexington, Kentucky, today at 5. This is just the second all-time meeting between the two programs. They have taken them on before. Consequently, they took them in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and Ohio State did win that game.
Yeah, 3-1 victory back in 2010, as you said, coincidentally. Another first-round matchup. But Ohio State, they have a tough region of that bracket. They drew the same region as Penn State, Wisconsin, and Illinois State. And when they faced those teams this year, the Buckeyes went 0-5. So 5 of their 11 losses coming in against teams that they very well could face later in this tournament. They will be taking on the, if they're able to win their game against Lipscomb, they would take on the winner of Oakland University, who will be facing Kentucky, who's 13th ranked and 13th seeded. And so basically, yeah, if they're able to win those 2 games, advance to the Sweet 16, it's not a cakewalk. You know, you've got, like I said, Penn State and Wisconsin have had their number. They swept the Buckeyes in consecutive meetings for each team. So 4 games where the Buckeyes didn't win a set against top flight Big Ten competition. Kentucky will present a challenge, no question about it.
That's what I think. Kentucky, I do see Kentucky beating Oakland. I do think that'll happen. And I mean, I don't know, Buckeyes 18th, Kentucky 13th. That's not too big of a difference. I think Ohio State can do it. I think they've shown great resilience, especially on the road. I mean, they took that trip in October, which was just like a month where they were gone.
Yep.
So I think they do well on the road. I think they have great senior leaders. I think Andrea Cossack's, I think we were kind of talking about it earlier. She is the face of this Ohio State team. I think she's really just going to help the Buckeyes just go through, and I think they'll do very well.
Yeah, it's a great pick because she was the Sportsmanship Award honoree for the Big Ten for Ohio State. So we'll have to see how that region breaks down as the games advance, and we'll keep you updated, of course, on our Twitter account, but more to follow on that later. Kaylee, what is going on in the world of wrestling? Because our show 2 weeks ago, they were headed to Virginia Tech and they were headed to Virginia. And tell us a little bit more about how they did on the road.
Well, the Ohio State Buckeye wrestling team, they had a loss-win series with Virginia over the break. They lost to Virginia Tech. They lost to the Hokies 19-18, but they beat the number 9 Virginia. So the Hokies were able to beat the Buckeyes with a 6-4 decision in the 285-pound weight class by receiving a tie-breaking point. So kind of just big defeat for the Buckeyes. Johnny DeJulius and Logan Stieber saw wins against the Hokies, as well as John Demis and Kenny Quartz and then Kyle Snyder. Against Virginia, the Buckeyes quickly bounced back, winning 8 of 10 matches. The Buckeyes were led by redshirt senior Logan Stieber and redshirt freshman Kyle Snyder to win that match 30-7. Nathan Tomasello shook off his loss to the Hokies by beating Will Mason in an 18-8 major decision. Logan Stieber pinned the number 12 ranked Cavalier. Stieber is now 5-0 on the season, and all five of his wins have come off of bonus points, which includes 2 technical falls and then 3 falls. Kyle Snyder, he improved to 7-0 in his freshman campaign with a 20-6 major decision, getting him ranked 7th nationally. Other Buckeyes to win were Johnny DeJulius, Randy Langus, Josh Demis, and Kenny Quartz. So really just kind of impressive by, I guess, all the Buckeye wrestlers. They came back against the Virginia Tech Hokies, and I see great things coming from them, especially, losing a former teammate. I think that's just going to rally them with each other. They're all going to come together and just become this big, standout team.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you mentioned that because, yeah, Costa Cara, George, of course, close with this team. So, you know, they have to be struggling with the tragedy of the past week as well. But they will be headed to Las Vegas this coming week. Now, they did hand Virginia their first loss of the season. So Virginia drops to 12. Kind of a weird hot and cold weekend for the Buckeyes to experience, similar to what we've witnessed with both the men's and women's ice hockey teams. You know, you have a setback early, and then you kind of change your identity and end up victorious or having a different look in your second game. So the Buckeyes are now ranked 7th in the country. Virginia Tech have that little edge on them. They're in 6th, but what can we expect when they head to Las Vegas this weekend?
Well, I think you're going to see Logan Stieber and Kyle Snyder just continue to shine. I mean, right now, those are the 2 Buckeyes that are undefeated. Nathan Tomasello, like I said before, he hit a bit of a rough patch with the Hokies. But you really have to think about it. The Hokies won by a hair. Yep. They won by a tie-breaking point. And so 19-18, they were right there with them the whole time. So I foresee the Buckeyes coming into Las Vegas. I see them winning. I just think that this is a team that's going to rally with each other. They're going to continue to do that. They've done really well. They have tremendous talent in all weight class. So I think even heavyweight, great weight. I just think all these guys, they're doing really well. Kenny Courts is someone that no one really kind of looks at him, but he's done exceptionally well for the Buckeyes. He's won a lot so far. Logan Stieber, Kyle Snyder, this is a good team. It's a fully stacked team.
Definitely, and I think Kyle Snyder, he's, you know, we had discussed in preparation for the show, he very well could be the next sort of household name of Buckeye wrestling. So it'll be interesting to see what the redshirt freshman captain's able to do this weekend in Nevada. But if you don't mind, I'll do a little bit of basketball recapping.
All right.
So the Buckeyes, just recently, this past week, obviously we had the Thanksgiving holiday, but they faced James Madison and ended up victorious, 73-56 there. Good showing for the Buckeyes, but they went on the road earlier this week and took on the Louisville Cardinals and suffered their first defeat of the season. I was able to watch a lot of that game, some of the things that I observed in terms of things they're going to need to fix to kind of have a positive story arc, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, moving through their non-conference schedule. Well, first of all, Wayne Blackshear for the Cardinals was outstanding. He was 4 of 8 from behind the arc. And Louisville just played consistent basketball. Ohio State was in a 35-18 hole going into the break, and it frankly proved too much of a deficit to need to overcome. So what I mainly noticed was that D'Angelo Russell, he's quickly becoming a very, an effective and young leader on this team. We may not necessarily see much more of him than just this one season. He's that sort of raw talent that could very well move on to professional grade basketball. But he was the team's leading scorer in both of those games, 14 points against James Madison and 17 against Louisville. But he and Shannon Scott struggled in the Louisville game, turning the ball over 4 and 5 times respectively. You can't have that, especially from a veteran like Shannon Scott, but certainly from the guy that you're turning to as your guard, as your sort of field marshal, if you will, essentially taking over where Aaron Kraft left off. So Russell needs to tighten up in terms of consistency there. Amir Williams was another concerning player for me because he had 5 rebounds, and you have Sam Thompson and Jayshawn Tate coming in and out-rebounding the big man. Now, I understand he's splitting time with Anthony Lee and Trey McDonald, but Amir Williams needs some more aggressiveness. He needs some more physicality under the net. He's your guy in the post. You have to be able to rely on him to come down with a basketball and get those certainly defensive boards, but you'd like to think that he contributes offensive boards as well. Mark Loving continuing to be consistent, however. I sang his praises in one of our previous episodes. He had 13 points against the Louisville Cardinals. He had a steal. He's just balanced, really. He contributes steals. He's right there to get offensive and defensive boards, and he's one of those quiet guys. Thad Matta had said, he's the loudest guy in the locker room but quiet on the court. Well, he produces on the court, and that's frankly what's important right now. He was 2 of 3 from behind the arc and 4 of 7 from the free throw shooting line. So I like Russell's increasing role, but he has to tighten up his style of play because he's not going to get his playing time reduced. Sam Thompson and he lead the team in minutes played. So moving forward, they're going to need to communicate better. They need to up the assists on the stat sheet, really across the board. No one player. They just need to work better as a team. They'll figure it out when we get closer to the Big Ten part of the season. But I look for big things from this team. But Russell and Shannon Scott especially need to play better. And then, like I said, Williams, needs to be a little more consistent in the post. But they will be taking on Colgate University here in Columbus on Saturday. So who knows if they'll be able to, tighten up their the things that they struggled with at Louisville. But men's ice hockey, Kaylee, what's going on the ice?
Well, the men's ice hockey team, they traveled to South Bend to participate in the Shillelagh tournament. The Buckeyes took on Western Michigan University Friday night. They lost 6-2. On Saturday, the Buckeyes took on the Fighting Irish in a 5-1 win for third place in the tournament. 10 players received points for the Buckeyes, including 2 goals for senior captain Tanner Fritz and 3 assists from sophomore Nick Schilke. So 2 new faces also saw their first career points with Victor Bjorken and Blake Deering. They both scored their first goals of the season. Derek Angeli added 2 points with a goal and an assist, and junior Anthony Greco added 2 assists for the team. And last time they traveled to Michigan last year, they lost Colin Olson, who came in the Buckeyes first, and they lost Matt Tompkins to an injury. So the third-string goalie Logan Davis was in goal. Ohio State lost both those games, so they're coming back to this one. We're going to have either Matt Tompkins or Christian Fry. I never know. Matt Tompkins stayed in the entire series for Michigan State, so we could see Christian Fry stay in the entire series. Could see Matt Tompkins. We don't really know. But it'll be interesting to see what happens there in Ann Arbor.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's going to do it for this week, Kaylee.
Yeah.
We obviously have some action to look forward to this weekend, but feel free to, as usual, follow us at Chalk Talk OSU on Twitter. We've got all kinds of little tidbits there for you, things we can't necessarily mention in our time slot on the show. And
join the conversation. Hashtag CTOSU. Definitely have to get in there, get that hashtag. And, well, I guess we'll sign off. So I'm Kaylee Renz for Andrew Todd Smith and our producer and director, Aaron Yarian. Thank you and goodbye.